When James Collins arrived in Gardenville, he was determined to change the system. But what he found, a file that destroyed the career of the city's most influential detective, sparked a revolution no one saw coming. What happened next shocked even the most seasoned observers. But let's start from the very beginning. James Collins, a 35-year-old black activist and former police officer, moved to the small town of Gardenville after a scandalous dismissal from his previous job. Though he had once lost faith in the system he served, James resolved not to give up, and instead to fight for justice from the ground up. In Gardenville, he rented a modest house and quickly integrated into the local community, organizing meetings with activists, attending town hall gatherings, and publishing exposés on social media. Meanwhile, Detective Richard Carson, a 50-year-old police veteran with 25 years of service, sat in his office preparing for a quiet retirement. Known for his tough demeanor and unwavering belief in order at any cost, Carson had no reason to suspect that his routine days were about to end. But a neighbor's complaint about James shattered his calm. "There's a new black guy on the street. Looks suspicious," the neighbor claimed. Carson, accustomed to trusting such remarks, didn't hesitate to investigate. A quick search led him to James's social media profiles, where the activist openly criticized police injustice, exposed corrupt officers, and called for systemic reform. To Carson, it looked like an attempt to undermine the very foundation of law enforcement. The next day, using his official police access, Carson decided to dig deeper into James's background. He had done it many times before, rifling through files for anything incriminating. But this time, Carson stumbled across an unexpected find, a document in James's file titled "Immediate Termination Order for Detective Richard Carson." At the bottom of the document was James's signature, confirming his involvement in the internal investigation that could have ended Carson's career, if not for bureaucratic delays. Carson's heart raced. "What the hell?" he muttered, a wave of anger swelling within him. Wasting no time, Carson decided to summon James for questioning, under the pretext of addressing the neighbor's complaint. James agreed, fully aware that the police were beginning to surveil him. Their impending meeting was set to ignite a battle, one where neither side was willing to back down. James arrived at the station as requested, his face calm but his mind tense. Carson sat behind his desk, scrutinizing him with the sharp gaze of a predator, searching for weakness. "Tell me, Mr. Collins, what brings you to Gardenville?" Carson opened with an official tone. "I'm working on projects to improve our community," James replied evenly. "That's not against the law, is it?" "Of course not." Carson leaned in slightly. "But you seem particularly interested in the pasts of our officers, mine included. Any particular reason for that?" James smiled faintly. "Sometimes the past needs to be brought to light to rid ourselves of what harms the future." The implication struck a nerve. Carson's patience snapped. Rising from his chair, he grabbed the folder containing James's file and slammed it onto the desk. "What the hell is this? How are you connected to this termination order? Did you orchestrate all of this?" James calmly opened the folder and pointed to the document's signature. "Yes, that's my signature. I was part of the commission that reviewed the complaints against you. And yes, the evidence spoke for itself. Racial profiling, unjust arrests, excessive force. I did what I believed was right." Carson clenched his fists. "Right? You destroyed my reputation. Do you have any idea what I've been through?" James' expression hardened. "And do you know what the people you humiliated have been through?" His voice grew sharper. "Do you think I did this for revenge? No. I did it for everyone who can't stay silent anymore." Carson, now visibly fuming, was on the verge of lashing out, but James pressed on. "You are the product of a system that has rotted from within for decades. I'm not trying to destroy you personally, but your methods are poison to this community. And here's the most important part. We're going to change the system. You can either become part of that change or be swept away entirely." Carson glared at James in silence, his chest heaving. The words had struck deep, though he refused to admit it. As James walked out of the station, Carson remained seated in stunned silence. His thoughts raced, and the weight of their conversation settled heavily on him. For the first time, Carson realized that something was crumbling. Either the system he had upheld his entire life, or himself. The news of a data leak from Gardenville's police department becomes a sensation. Local media published the scandalous file on Carson, including complaints about his racist behavior, internal investigations, and the order for his dismissal. The town erupts in heated discussions. Social media buzzes with hashtags like Justice in Gardenville and hashtag Reform the Force. James becomes a local hero. His posts about the need for reform gain thousands of shares, and he is invited for interviews on local radio and television. He uses the platform to explain why officers like Carson should not be serving in law enforcement. Meanwhile, Carson spirals into a personal and professional crisis. Colleagues who once supported him now distance themselves, worried about their own reputations. His captain summons him to the office. "Richard," the captain begins with a stony expression, "you understand this is a scandal. You need to step down. Immediately." "Step down? For what?" Carson snaps. "I gave this town 25 years. And that's the problem. The old ways don't work anymore. We need a fresh approach." Carson leaves the station under the weight of his colleagues' stares, feeling abandoned. His thoughts fixate on James, whom he blames for everything. At the same time, James organizes a town meeting. Hundreds of Gardenville residents gather in the square to discuss police reform. James speaks passionately and confidently. This isn't just about one detective, it's about an entire system that prioritizes power over the people it's supposed to serve. But we can change that. And we'll start here, in our town. Suddenly, Carson appears in the crowd. The audience turns, surprised by his presence. He steps onto the stage, takes the microphone, and to everyone's shock, begins to speak. "James is right. The system is broken. I was part of it, and I turned a blind eye to a lot. Not because I'm a bad person, but because it was easier that way. Now I see that it has to change." His admission draws a wave of applause. James watches Carson closely, detecting a rare sincerity in his eyes. Carson continues, "I can't change the past, but I'm ready to help shape the future. If you'll let me, I want to assist in reforming the department." The scene marks a critical turning point. The town becomes divided. Some applaud Carson's willingness to change, while others view his words as too little, too late. One thing, however, is clear. The system will never be the same again. Following Carson's public admission, Gardenville's City Council convenes an emergency session. Protests outside the police department swell into a mass movement for reform. Under public pressure, the council establishes a temporary committee to investigate all complaints of bias and misconduct within the department. James becomes a key member of the committee. Carson is officially dismissed, but instead of retreating into obscurity, he offers his expertise to the committee. He is appointed as a consultant to help implement new standards for police-community relations. The decision sparks debate, but James sees it as an opportunity to rebuild trust. The reforms begin with mandatory training for police officers, including bias awareness, de-escalation techniques, and community engagement workshops. Carson becomes a trainer, sharing his own experiences and mistakes as cautionary lessons. Meanwhile, James focuses on a personal mission, creating a community center. Together with Carson, he launches a fundraising campaign. Their goal is to establish a space where residents can access legal support, education, and job assistance. The center will also serve as a venue for positive police-citizen interactions outside of arrests and investigations. Months later, on the center's opening day, the entire town gathers for the ceremony. James and Carson stand side by side, symbolizing reconciliation and progress. Taking the microphone, Carson delivers a speech that surprises even James. "For most of my life, I thought I understood justice, but I've only just realized that justice starts with listening and learning. This center isn't just a chance for the town, it's a chance for me, a chance to make things right." James concludes, "This place isn't just a building. It's a symbol of hope that we can be better. Together, We can build a future where everyone feels safe and respected." The crowd erupts into applause. As the people watch, Carson and James shake hands, a powerful gesture showing that change is possible. Gardenville's story becomes a national example of how bridging divides and self-reflection can transform an entire system.